shows are individually owned and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Welcome to the Edventures in Tech podcast, talking the latest tips and trends in educational technology to innovate and engage your students. Here are your hosts, Andrew and Dan.
Welcome to episode 43 of the Adventures in Tech podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Andrew.
And I'm Dan.
And this week's episode is sponsored by Pipcorn. No, I'm just kidding. If you like the content, you like us, help us out by providing feedback and a rating on wherever you download your podcast from. We greatly appreciate your support. Dan loves his Pipcorn. We're ready to roll. We're ready to rock. We're not going to go off the rails. Right, Dan? Want to make a podcast? Spotify's got a platform that lets you make one super easily, then distribute it everywhere and even earn money, all in one place for free. It's called Spotify for Podcasters, and here's how it works. Spotify for Podcasters lets you record and edit podcasts right from your phone or computer, so no matter what your setup is like, you can start creating today. Then you can distribute your podcast to Spotify and everywhere else podcasts are heard. Video podcasts are also available on Spotify. And when you want to take those conversations with your fans to the next level, there's Q&A and polls, the best way to get your fans talking about your podcast. With Spotify for Podcasters, you can earn money in a variety of ways, including ads and podcast subscriptions. And best of all, it's totally free with no catch. Ever since I discovered Spotify for Podcasters, I feel like having all these options like video podcasts and the interaction with our fans has brought us to an entirely new creative level. I highly recommend you give it a try. Download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to www.spotify.com/podcasters to get started.
I can't promise that.
Okay. So we're going to, though, Dan, skip weekly windup. There's not a ton of news coming out. We will get back to classroom updates, but for sake of time, we are going to go into our special guest interview. The one thing I did want to say is we will post the sticker requests, right? If anybody wants a sticker, please let us know. But our interview this week, he was just fantastic, and it's Dave Burgess. And then, Dan, we love Dave.
Absolutely. So let's get right to the interview.
All right, so Dan and I are very fortunate today. We have Dave Burgess. He's a well-known author, speaker, and educational consultant in the field of education. He is the author of one of my favorite books and the best-selling book, Teach Like a Pirate, which provides teachers with practical strategies for engaging students, creating dynamic lessons, and, of course, igniting a love of learning. Dave is also a sought-after keynote speaker, known for his inspiring and energetic presentations on the topic of teaching and learning. He has over 25 years of experience in the field of education and is a wealth of knowledge and expertise on how to create engaging and effective learning environments for students. Dave is so passionate about empowering teachers and helping them make a greater impact in their classrooms, and his work has been praised by educators all over the world, and I cannot tell you how grateful Dan and I are to have Dave. Welcome him to the Adventures in Tech podcast. Dave, I hope I gave a good introduction and overview of your bio there.
It was absolutely awesome. Thank you so much. I'm honored to be on the show. Thanks. I really appreciate being here with you.
Great. So, Dave, tell us, can you tell us about your background, how you got into the author, speaker, educational consultant in education?
Yeah. So my background first goes all the way back to coaching. Before I was a teacher, I was a coach. I always say that basketball was my gateway drug into education. Nice. And my first job, I worked for John Wooden at the John Wooden basketball camps, Thousand Oaks, California. Yeah,
that's
so
awesome.
Three summers for John Wooden. So I got to kind of sit at the feet of the master, and he had a big influence on my life. And then my first job in the school system, I was hired as a basketball coach and didn't even have a teacher credential. I enjoyed working with the kids so much. I'm like, how come I'm not doing this for my life? Went back to night school, got my teaching credential, and started to teach at that same school. Eventually got so obsessed with teaching, gave the coaching up, and just focused in on the teaching. And then partway through that journey is when I started to do workshops and seminars and speak at conferences. And that just kind of all spiraled from there.
That's awesome.
That's great. So, thinking of that, so what was it in your experience as a teacher that influenced you to work in educational consulting and authoring and making that leap?
Yeah. So I think it's about amplifying your impact. So that's one of the things as an educator, we get a chance to have this incredible impact. I call it embracing the mightier purpose of being an educator. We are in the life-changing business. And so if you think about the number of people that we impact with the students in our classroom, but then not just that, like those students go off and have interactions with other people and in communities. And eventually, you know, it's a world-changing profession. And so as a teacher, I got to the point where it's like, okay, how can I even have a bigger impact? And that was like, well, maybe I can go share what I'm doing with other teachers and try to help them with their students. And then that eventually became, so as I started to go speak and the message started to resonate and the book came out and all these things happened, then it was like, okay, wait a second. Now I've told my story. I've amplified my impact. Now, how can I help other people amplify their impact? And so then the focus of the company became much less about me and my project, became more about like, hey, I didn't tell the whole story. I don't know everything about teaching. And so how can I find people that are doing powerful things in their classroom and help them spread their message? And that's where you get into some of these other people that, we've published over 175 books now.
That's great. You know, it's fun getting to listen to you. And for our audience, you did mention first if this was video. I kind of wish it was video because I can see that passion coming through you when you begin talking about it. And it just makes me think back to when I read your book originally and seeing that passion come out. And it made me like realize that when I'm in there, I can use my passion to create experiences for students. And that has really influenced me as a teacher as well. So it's great seeing that and hearing that from you.
Yeah, no, it's fun. It's this situation where like sometimes when people this is what they'll say to me. They'll say like, hey, how come you didn't write about this in the book? Or how come this isn't in the book? And they'll point to these things. And like educational technology would be one of those places where actually the book is very thin on anything Edtech, right? And I always tell people the same thing. Well, there's a very good reason why there's not much Edtech in the book. It's because I wasn't very good at it, right? And so like, I wanted the book to be written from a very authentic place. Like if it's in the book, I did it. And I felt I was successful with it. And then I'm sharing it, right? But so I know that, again, it was never meant to be the encyclopedia of teaching. That's what I tell people. It's like, hey, I didn't try to write the encyclopedia of teaching. I tried to tell my story of what was being successful for me in my classroom with my students. Well, but I know Edtech is important. So maybe I can connect with this guy named Matt Miller. Maybe I can help Matt Miller spread his message. Maybe I can take what Alice Keeler is doing and help Alice spread her messages. Maybe I could take Eric Kurtz with Control Alt Achieve and help him spread his message. And so it became a situation of like where, okay, I need to find people who are good at some of these other things. And the way I can amplify my impact is by helping them.
That's great. Dave, that really resonates with everything you were saying. And I want to talk about that because you just completely described how you're pivoting with, you know, the ed tech realm and everything like that. But before we get into that, because you're so passionate, as Dan had mentioned, let's talk just a bit about Teach Like a Pirate. Like, how did the concept for the book come about, and what message, you know, is the main point that you want to convey through it? Obviously, you talk the talk, you walk the walk, but what was the message that you wanted educators, if they could have one takeaway from the book?
Yeah, so if you take a look at what Matt did with Tech Like a Pirate, for example, the line that inspired Matt in that project was, don't just teach a lesson, create an experience.
Yep.
And so that's one of the key takeaways from the book, is that like they might forget that prohibition lecture, right? But they're never going to forget going to the speakeasy, the experience that you create around it, right? And so it's like, here's my content. Not good enough. How do I make it come alive? How do I make it memorable? How do I create an experience around this? So it's adding that richness to our instruction. And the example I use often is in my keynotes and presentations is I come out with like this raw steak. Like, hey, like if someone served you this raw steak for dinner, like you're not going to be very happy right now. No, there's all sorts of things that go along with that steak, right? And even, by the way, if you were coming to my house for dinner, I would first contact you to find out if you even eat steak. And if you didn't eat steak, I would provide you a suitable alternative, right? But even if you did eat steak, before you got there, I would have put some rub and seasoning on it. I would have soaked it in a flavorful marinade, right? I would have preheated my grill. I don't put my my steak down on a cold grill. I preheat my grill, right? Because when you drop your steak on a cold grill, nothing happens. But when you drop it on a preheated grill, what happens? It sizzles, right? We want our content to sizzle when we drop it. But then when I serve it to you, I would offer you some side dishes to go with it, a beverage to drink. And when all that was done, I would offer you dessert, right? And that's what we would call a meal. That's what we would call a dining experience. And that's how we have to look at education too. You don't just come out with your raw content and flop it out in front of students, right? You have to have that, you have to take the time, the energy to add that richness. What are you marinating with? What are the seasonings? What are the side dishes, beverages? And so that's what Teach Like a Pirate is about, is how you can add all these other elements. You know your content. Teachers know their content. So now, how can you take that content and make it so it's more appetizing for kids and get them excited about it and not just wanting to dine with you that day, but come back the next day and join you again?
That's such a great analogy. I can't. I love it. I love how it resonates. And you were just so passionate about it, Dave, that it speaks volumes. And it's very, it just resonates, into everybody's core, because it is exactly what teaching is about. It's not talking about the content, but the sizzle and the sear and everything else that goes around with it.
And, I was going to say, I love that analogy. I might have to use that and steal that from you, because that's a great way of doing it. Because so often, everything with, when we work with teachers, it's about content, but often we forget that, like, we're not teaching content, we're teaching children. A diverse group of children with different aptitudes and different passions. And then all those things that go along the side is where we can become really powerful as a teacher in order to tap into that and provide those opportunities. So that was super awesome. And it also makes me think of, like, when you're teaching like a pirate. What does pirate actually mean? Because I'm not sure I think that would be good for our listeners to know that, is pirate just the person that's going to go and sail on that boat and rob things from people? Or is there a deeper meaning to pirate?
Yeah, absolutely. And so people will ask me about this all the time, right? And so it has nothing to do with the dictionary definition. We do not want teachers to go out and attack and rob ships at sea, right? So there's kind of three layers to the whole pirate metaphor. First of all, it's about embracing the spirit of a pirate. To me, the spirit of a pirate is someone who's unconventional, someone who's willing to reject the status quo, someone who's willing to sail into uncharted waters with no guarantee of success, a risk taker, a rebel, a maverick in the classroom. So it's embracing that spirit of being a pirate as someone who is willing to go outside the norms. And then it also is an acronym. And so I'm abnormally obsessed with acronyms, as many educators are. So the first thing I did is I turned the page sideways. I wrote PIRATE down the page. I tried to make an acronym. I knew I wanted to talk about passion and enthusiasm. They're the P and the E were sitting at the cornerstone, at the end of the beginning and the end of the word, like the cornerstones of it. And I knew I wanted to talk about building rapport with kids as sort of being the heart of teaching. There, the R was sitting in the center. And so the whole word PIRAT is an acronym. And then also it's a play on words with hooks. This is all about how you can hook students and get them into your content, into your curriculum, and draw them into what you're doing almost magically or magnetically. And so pirates are known for having hooks, and this is all about how you can hook students in your content. So that's kind of the three layers of the whole pirate metaphor thing.
Oh, that's great. So, looking at that, and as you started moving forward, I'm just wondering, can you share some of the most exciting projects or initiatives that you've worked on, either related to your experience in the classroom or in your experience in teacher development?
Yeah. So, I think we're super proud of all of the books, and every project has, I think has made a significant impact. And certainly there's some kind of touchstone projects that really kind of changed things for us. One of them, I think, is the Innovator's Mindset with George Couros, and getting a chance to work with George. And now we run a publishing company together too, like a kind of a subsidiary of Dave Burgess Consulting Impress Books. And so it's been an honor to work with George. Matt's book, for sure, is kind of one of the touchstone projects of the DBC line. When I can still remember, I spoke in Indiana at a conference, and I was keynoting it, and Matt was speaking at the conference too. This is very early in Matt's journey. And Matt contacted me and wanted some kind of help with his speaking business and with how he could get out there more on the road and get in front of more people. And I can still remember, I could picture the desk in the hotel room that I was staying at and I had a conversation with Matt, and I said, Matt, you got to write a book. And I can remember Matt's initial pushback was like, Dave, you don't understand. My brand is ditch that textbook. you're telling me to write a book, and I'm like, I am the ditch that textbook guy. Like, do you know how much grief I'm going to get if the ditch that textbook guy is trying to sell a book? And I'm like, hey, you know what? You will get some grief about it, but that's the way you're going to be able to amplify your message. And you need to write this book. And so assigned Matt, and ditch that textbook came out. And I think the Alice Keeler projects were big for us too, early on. I can remember Alice was going to go speak at ISTE. Google Classroom was all the rage. Everyone was talking about Google Classroom. A lot of people didn't know what was going on with this Google Classroom thing. And she was writing blog posts about it. And her blog posts were blowing up. Like every single one was going viral. And we pulled together that project and got 50 things to do with Google Classroom out for her to have at ISTE, and man, it just like exploded. And so I think those are some of the, like I said, we're proud of all of them, but those are some of the early ones that really, really set things off for us.
Dave, I want to talk and kind of pivot in the idea of how do you see the role of teachers nowadays evolving in this modern classroom and with the latest news of AI coming out, and like what skills are essential for teachers to have in order to be successful in this, changing landscape that's rapidly changing?
Yeah. And so I don't have any of the same fears about the AI stuff that a lot of people have. And I think there's several reasons for that. First of all, it's another tool in our toolbox, right?
Yeah.
And these things have come along many times before. Now, I think AI is going to be transformational. There's no doubt about it. This is not some little trend or fad. This is going to shift the entire landscape, okay? But not in a scary way. Right. And if you look back at it, I'll give you kind of several examples of this. And so, I mean, obviously, like when the calculator came out, everyone's like, "Oh my God, what's going to happen with math class? Like, they can just plug things into a calculator. Like this is over. Like, why do we even have math teachers anymore?" Like, and of course, that's just absolutely, completely ridiculous, right?
Right.
And calculators became an important tool in the toolbox. And same thing happened with Google. Like, are you kidding me? Like, I'll throw every single test out the window. My kids can just push it into Google, right? They can just punch it into Google.
You're right.
Why do we teach any content at all anymore? A kid can pull out his phone and pull it up faster than you can even say it out of your mouth, right? And so it's all over because of Google. No, Google became such an incredible, useful tool for us to use in education. And this is the same thing true with AI. I'll give you an example. I'm a chess player. Okay. And so I'm obsessed with chess. Well, the same thing happened with that. Gary Kasparov was the world champion, and he played Deep Blue, a chess computer, and he lost. And everybody was on fire. Oh my God, chess is over. And now the top chess computers, like if you're a chess nerd, these are like Alpha Zero, Stockfish. Stockfish is one of the top chess computers. They are so much better than the best human in the world. It's not even funny. They are incredible. They can destroy any human. No human can win a game against Stockfish. Okay.
Wow.
That's how good the chess computers are now. So did it end? People were worried, like, oh, chess must be over. It's going to be over now. I mean, all the computers are better. Like, no, the computers have become incredible tools in the arsenal of chess professionals. Right. And even me, a chess amateur, I use chess computers I go analyze. I lose a game. How did I go wrong? I put it into the chess engine, and the engine is able to point to me like, oh, this is where the game turned around for me. I didn't see this tactic, and and I learn more. And actually, now chess computers have transformed how humans play chess, and they have whole new strategies and ideas and concepts that the top chess professionals in the world are using that are computer generated. Okay. And so now it's just actually raised the level. It didn't ruin chess. It's raised the level of chess, and it's made it more accessible to more people as well, because more people now are able to take advantage of these tools. Same thing's going to happen with AI. It's just going to raise the level. It's just going to help us. And so I am not scared about this coming revolution at all. I'm excited about it.
I think that Dan and I can both agree with you 100%. We're excited. There's been a lot of calls to block it, and it's going to change. Get rid of English teachers, right? It's not going to happen. We are on the same wavelength as you, Dave. That was great.
Well, I mean, I just love the analogies that you're giving us today, the raw steak, but now the chess computers raising the game, and then talking about, you know, you're starting to work with Matt and the other people like Eric with the Edtech, because it's all revolving around the same message that you're going in there to create experiences, to provide the best learning opportunities for your students. So being able to utilize whatever technology it is, or AI, is just going to generate more time for the application of experiences and the application of thought in the classroom, which is truly exciting as we keep moving forward. And I think that a lot of people are on the forefront embracing that, but still, I think there's a lot of challenges that are out there. So in your experience with teachers and educators today, what do you think the biggest challenge is that's facing education today? And how do you see these challenges being addressed in the future?
Yeah, so I would say, as I kind of travel around and see teachers in different places, I think morale might be at an all-time low.
Right.
And I think if you were to really, like, if you were to survey teachers and say, like, hey, what is it that you're concerned about in education right now? I don't think AI would even be on the radar. I think most educators I'm talking to see it again as just one of these shifts in the landscape, which is that they might have some struggles now. They might have some issues like, how are we going to do this? How are we going to use this? How are we going to, I know some concerned about plagiarism and like all this kind of stuff like that. I think those things are going to work themselves out. I think still the bigger issue is that teachers feel overwhelmed. Teachers feel that I hear lots of discussions of behavior management issues. And like, that seems like kind of an old school thing to be worried about. But I think that if you're actually in the trenches right now, that there has been something that's a little different right now as far as dealing with students and engagement, behavior management, all those things like that. And, that's why I feel good about my message. I feel it's an evergreen. Sometimes people bristle at my focus on things like student engagement. And I always thought, like, hey, listen, it doesn't matter what you say if nobody's listening.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
It always comes back to that. Like, if you can't pull your class in and really have them in the palm of your hands, and you're in trouble. And I think maybe even more so now than before.
No, it's a very good point. It's always one thing that always goes back to me as we think about that is the best classroom management's a good lesson plan. And then, going back to, that revelation I had when I read your book years ago, like Teach Like a Pirate, is like, really, when I'm creating my lesson, I should be thinking about creating experiences. Yep. and find those hooks and bring them in. And so that's a great message. Thank you.
Yeah. Dave, let's talk about that message, right? So, we know now that you're, a well sought after keynote speaker. And can you elaborate and speak about your experience as a keynote speaker and that message you want to convey through your presentations as you're at all of your speaking engagements?
Yeah. So when I'm speaking, I look at it's kind of a 50-50 split. So 50% of the time, you might think you're listening to like a motivational speaker, like a Zig Ziglar or something like this, who's trying to light you up and get you to take action and get excited about this work, excited about this profession. And then 50% of the time, I am just literally showing you things as if you are the students. I am showing you things that I do in my classroom and allowing you to feel what it's like to be drawn in by these ideas and demonstrating these things, which then you can take and use the next day or add into what you're already doing into your curriculum. And so I think that's a super important part about that. And that's the way we look at the books too, is we want all the books to be inspirational. We want them all we want you to get fired up about them, but we want every book to also have that practicality. We want people to, like, I want people to go to my keynote and walk and like, I want them just like, how am I going to use this tomorrow? And have there be real clear answers to that, right? I don't want something that just gets you fired up and then you walk away and then like you kind of forget about it. I want things that change practice. Same thing with books. Yes, inspire me. But also we ask ourselves, what is someone going to do different next week after they read this book? And we want there to be clear answers for that. And so that's the same thing with the keynote. is I'm trying to intentionally hit kind of that 50-50 split of not only am I going to show you what to do, how to do it, and how it's going to transform your teaching, but also light you on fire to go out there and actually do it. And so it's kind of, you have to have that combination. And so I'm walking that fine line between those things. Even if it's a 1,000 people, you know, if I'm doing, like if I'm in a little school library doing a staff of 25 people, or 1,000 people in an auditorium, I just literally do the part of my lesson
Right.
right there in front of them, as if they're the students, because I want them to like see like, oh, I get it now. Like, that's pretty cool. Like that would draw a kid in. I see that now because it just drew me in.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. I mean, I love that, you know, that message that you just said of how you're trying to inspire the educators and everybody to change their practice and evolve. That's a phenomenal message.
So, you know, I'm curious though. So you've been around, you've had all these experience, you're touching so many educators out there, ourselves included, everything you're doing for us. Is there any particularly memorable moment or experience you had as a result of all the work that you're doing that really just stands out for you?
Yes, that's a tough one. So there's been lots of moments that have been like that. I think one of the most memorable things is going to a conference and like, you don't really have a real sense. Like, to me, I'm just Dave.
Yep.
And I went to a conference with some buddies, and like people were just, I couldn't walk across I could not walk across from one place to another. Like I had to to get to my sessions, I had to almost like take back alleys like to get to
celebrity.
Like all these like pictures and stuff. And like, they're like, hey, they're like holding the cameras and taking all these pictures and stuff like that. And to me, I'm just, you know, like, what the heck is going on? Like, this is, because again, I'm just Dave. I'm
Dave.
I'm a U.S. history teacher who wrote a book about some stuff I'm doing in the classroom, right? And then it was like this surreal is the only word I can say for it.
Yeah.
And it still blows me away. And it's I never take it for granted, and it's just something that, you know, I try to be super gracious, and because it's like I don't know why y'all want a picture, but like let's do this and smile. And but it's just like a super surreal thing, and it's just the book. I had the good fortune to have it go viral, right?
Yeah.
So Teach Like a Pirate, the book, and in social media and in various places, it went viral, and just like well beyond anything I was doing, it just like spun completely out of control and became this whole kind of thing. And I'm still getting used to that.
Well, you know, kudos to you, Dave, for that, because that's just a scratch on the surface of the kind of impact that you have made with Teach Like a Pirate and the consulting and the keynotes and everything else that you said that it now has spiraled and come out of that. So that's phenomenal. So as far as advice for teachers looking to improve their practice, besides reading your book, if they haven't already, right, and make a greater impact in the classrooms, what kind of advice would you give? Let's say, whether they're a seasoned teacher or a novice, a beginning teacher who is just starting their career in this field. What is some tips or tricks or advice you can give them?
Yeah. So first of all, what is unique about you, your particular strengths, your talents, and your voice that you can add to your classroom is what's going to make you most powerful and effective with students. And so I always emphasize this. I am not trying to create Dave Burgess clones. I do not want people going out and teaching like Dave Burgess. Dave Burgess is sharing with you some ideas that these help me, right? But now you take your strengths, your talents, your voice, and then you weave it together with some of the human nature ideas that I'm talking about in Teach Like a Pirate to create the best you. So it's never about you teaching like me, because you're going to be a poor imitation of me, much like I would be a poor imitation of you, right? And so, but you're looking to add your own voice to what you do. And the other thing I would tell you is always walk around the world with the mindset of how can I use that? Like, that's what I always say. How can I use that? When you see what is it that's engaging people right now out in the real world, how can I use that in my classroom? What is it the kids are into outside of school? How can I use that inside of school? And that's the same thing with like a chat GPT or anything like that. Don't fear it. Like, say, how can I use that? Now there's kind of two kinds of teachers. And picture I'm saying this maybe 2 years ago. Okay. But so one teacher says, all right, you know what? I'm a rational human being. I have a family to support. But if I see one more kid with a fidget spinner, I'm going to go to prison. I'm just like, there's battles worth fighting in education.
That ain't.
No.
A fidget spinner is one of them. I will choke a kid out over a fidget spinner. You know, like that was the one kind of teacher. The other kind of teacher is like, wow, that got big really fast. How can I use that? And maybe I can use that as a writing prompt. Like, I want you to, today you're going to write about the greatest fidget spinner in the history of the world. Or maybe we're going to use it in science. Learn like, why do some spin faster tthan others? And learn about friction and these different forces and stuff like this. And maybe we'll use a 3D printer and we'll code it in and we'll print out, we'll have you make your own fidget spinner or whatever it might be. And so it's a mindset of like fearing something or saying, how can I use that? Buckminster Fuller put it this way: don't fight forces, use them.
Yeah.
And AI is a perfect example of this. Like, you think you're going to fight AI? You are fighting a losing battle. So don't fight forces, use them. How can I use that is the question that you always ask. And I'm going to tell you something strange about Teach Like a Pirate that ties into this. There's not one educational book reference inside of it. Not a single one. Not because I don't like education books. I published over 175. It's because that's not where it came from. It was from the outside drawn in. It's my background as a coach. I told you I started as a coach. I use that in my classroom. Some of those techniques and strategies of a coach also are great techniques and strategies for teaching, right? My background as a magician influenced my sense of staging and showmanship and incorporation of props. My background as a marketer and entrepreneur. What does a marketer want to do? They're delivering a message and trying to persuade you to take action. That's what a marketer is trying to do. Well, what are we trying to do as teaching? We have messages and we're trying to persuade kids to take action, right? And so I'm using marketing and entrepreneurship ideas and sales ideas and tying it into my curriculum and how I teach. Now, my background, this is just a podcast, but now I have a background as an MC. Now, if you were to see me do a professional development workshop, you would say, wait a second, is this a PD or is this a show, right? Because I'm a person who's used to speaking in a fast and flourishy way on a microphone in front of people. And so it's influenced my professional development speaking style, right? So all these things have come together to create the best me. Again, but it's not about me, you teaching like me. It's about you doing that for your life too. And so the reason I'm able to do that is because I have a wide array of interests. I say, live wide, read wide. Don't just read in the education section of the bookstore, right? If you will intentionally honor your outside passions and interests and be willing to develop new ones, right? That's time away from education, but it's going to come back and it's going to influence you as an educator because now you're taking ideas from outside of education and you're dragging them back into your classroom, into your school system. So be willing to be a fully rounded person, like you're going to intentionally unplug from education. That's part of self-care as well, right? But it's not just for self-care. It's because when you unplug from education and honor your outside interests and hobbies and develop new ones, that gives you creative ammunition, which you're going to be able to bring back in. And so that's been a big influence for me. And I think it will be a lot of, it's not just that people emphasize the self-care nature of that, which is important, but it also is a big part of creativity as well.
Well, now you got me all fired up, and totally inspired. But I'm listening to you and I'm just in my mind, it's going back to like the authenticity of you as a person and you as an educator, bringing in your passion, sharing them, be willing to go down that road and be your authentic self with students, because then that's going to go to that R right there in Pirate. Like, building that rapport is so important as you start off working with your students, to build that space, that trust, that just that synergy within a classroom. Because when you can build that rapport, it opens up so many avenues of opportunity to take risks as a teacher and have the students support you on the risk, or allow the students to be able to trust you to take the risk and allow you to support them in there. So I love that message of bringing in your passions, your authenticity, bringing in the outside world into your classroom so you can really build upon that rapport of the students. That really strikes a chord.
And that's something with a lot of the projects too, the books, is we were trying to get the authors, we put it as we said, we want you to write your manifesto. Now something you're a little interested in. We want you to write the core message behind what you want to share with educators in the world, and to share your story as a part of it. Like a lot of books today, if you put them out on the table, education books, and you change the names around on the bottom of the books, it wouldn't even matter. Wouldn't matter. They're not in the book. It's written third person, formal, academic. But the idea of changing the names on the bottom of our books would be ridiculous because our people are in their books. Like if you take a book like, say, Tech with Heart by Stacey Roshan. Okay. It's because of her experience as a student, and a student with anxiety and some of the issues that she was going with growing up. She was vulnerable in the book and shared those things. And then she shows how, now a lot of times people think about tech as being impersonal. And she actually flips the script on that and says, no, tech is actually a tool for personalization. It's a tool for allow people, all the voices in your classroom to be heard. So a lot of times classrooms are overwhelmed by the hand raisers and the blurter outers of answers and the fast processors. But there's so many people in your classroom that have incredible things to share, but maybe they're a little slower to process. Maybe they have some social anxiety with sharing in front of their peers. Maybe there's some other stuff going on. And by using technology, you can empower all of those voices. You can have different ways that they can share what's going on. And you realize like, oh, wait a second, that person hasn't said anything for 3 months. But when I gave them the opportunity through technology to share what they were thinking about and what they were interested in, all of a sudden you realize, oh my gosh, that's like one of the deepest thinkers in my class, actually.
Right.
And I thought they were I thought they were barely paying attention, but I offered them this new avenue in order to empower them to share their voice. And now they're one of the most significant contributors in my classroom. And so like those messages are super important.
Dave, that's very powerful, and something that just resonated with me that I think is a quote that I can't get out of my mind is how you said, don't fight the forces, use them. It's just so powerful with how many things have come out, you know, and it may force change, but use those to your advantage and to be a more effective educator and create those experiences. Yeah.
You take some kid, what is the hardest thing for any assignment for a kid or an adult starting? The blank page is intimidating. I know I work with a lot of authors, right? And so I know that the blank page, like the hardest way to write a book is to open up a document and say, okay, page 1, let's go. Like, no, like you'll sit there for hours without like, what's my first sentence, right? So think about kids and how they have this fear of starting and this like perfectionism that overcomes them, and they don't want to make a mistake and all this kind of stuff. And well, maybe we can use AI for this. Maybe we can get something down on paper, a rough draft, that then they go in and work and personalize and add. And so we can use these tools in ways that are going to help students overcome some of the obstacles and challenges that they face. And it's just going to be, I think it's going to be increasingly powerful in the way that we can help students with these tools.
That's great. So I think we can start wrapping things up right now.
Yep.
We kept you on up. There's so many, I can keep talking forever. I mean, I'm just looking through because you were talking about all the different people that you've worked with. And I pulled up, again, I've looked at it so many times, but I pulled up the list of like DBCI books that you have on the website, and just the authors that you work with. You really have a place in the education community amongst educators that are willing to share with other educators. And I think that is inspiring for a lot of people. And I think that's what a lot of people should really be aware of not only your books, but your speaking, and the people that you work with are out there building a community of educators that is based upon sharing and doing what's best for kids. And that's a really important thing that should be out there. And I'm glad that it is.
Oh yeah, I think that's super important to us. We're looking for prolific sharers. We're looking for community builders. We're looking for people that are great at connecting, not someone who wants to write a book and then will go walk away and do something else, but to understand that a book is the start of the conversation. So now you shared your story, you wrote your book. Now we're looking for people that want to connect with their readers and build a community around their message. And so there's this spirit of reciprocity in the universe. Is that when you are a prolific sharer, when you are a community builder, and when you are a connector of people, those communities will turn around and support you, right? And so that's a central piece of what we do at DBC. And I've said this to authors over and over again: don't try to go sell your book. Because when you try to sell something, then not only do you feel kind of icky because you're an educator, you don't like to be salesy, right? that whoever you're talking to is kind of they don't like to be sold. No one likes to feel sold, right? So go spread your message. That's why you came to us to begin with. You had a message that you wanted to spread. Don't let that change when you have a book. Go out and spread a message, build a community around that message, and be an authentic member of that community. And then what will happen is that community will eventually support you.
So true.
That's a great message as we start to wrap things up. So Dave, what's the best place for the listeners to reach you and check out the consulting and all of the authors and the books you guys have put out?
Yeah, so I am on Twitter. You can find me at Burgess Dave. My name just flipped around to Burgess Dave.
Yep.
Instagram, I'm DBC_INC on Instagram. You have to put up with some running and fitness posts there too, but also education. And I have a podcast, The Dave Burgess Show.
I saw that. Was great.
Yeah, so I would love to have. I have lots of the authors on, and plus have some solo episodes. So the Dave Burgess Show podcast, I would love to have people listen to. And I'm at both DaveBurgess.com and DaveBurgessConsulting.com.
That's great.
That's great. And yeah, I just want to say, I just looked and I was looking, I'm ordering my next book now, which is Run Like a Pirate, because I haven't noticed.
Yeah, Adam, welcome. He's just the latest guest on the Dave Burgess Show. Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to have to go and listen to that. Yeah, as a big runner myself, I'm like, ooh, this would hit a chord.
Oh man, you're going to love, if you're a runner, I talk about in the podcast, it's kind of like Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. It's not really about motorcycle maintenance. And Run Like a Pirate is kind of like that. The whole through line of the story is his journey to run a marathon every month.
Wow.
Of a year. But that's the through line, but really it's the lessons along the way about, hard things.
I have to read it now. That was my goal, which I did during COVID. Every month of the lockdown, I ran a marathon or an ultra.
Oh, you are going to absolutely eat up that book. You're going to love it.
Awesome. I'm ordering it now.
Yeah, that's great. Dave, we can't thank you enough for joining us and sharing your expertise and your time today. We're truly appreciative of it. And hopefully we get to see you in person at one of your keynotes or speaking conventions or whatnot. And we'll say, hey, Dave, remember when we see you, we'll say, Dave, we got to take a picture just because we know it's going to, you got to have a picture.
Like it's just Dave.
We will get that. We'll get that selfie, get it up on social media.
There you go. That's exactly right.
Hey,
so
I really appreciate you two having me on the show. You guys are doing wonderful work. I love, I know I've listened to some of your episodes with Matt and various people, and you guys do great stuff. So thank you for putting your work out into the world.
Oh,
hey, it's all about sharing.
It's all about sharing. Community.
Like you said, Dave. Thank you so much. And hopefully we'll see you around soon.
Sounds great.
All right, Dan, I can't say that was such a fantastic interview with Dave. He is so exciting to just listen to. And obviously we were able to actually meet with a video as well. And he's just animated and just motivating.
I'm definitely motivated coming out of that. This is maybe one of the few times I wish we had a video component.
Don't give me any ideas, Dan.
This is one of very few. we don't need to look at these faces.
Oh, yeah, they'll see you eating your pipcorn, right?
That's right.
It. So, all right, once again, thank you for all your support. Listen on all the platforms, leaving us those reviews. You have questions, comments, suggestions, reach out on the socials. Tech Card, work smart, live at Edventures.
Find Andrew on all socials at A Nicola Tech and Dan at WCSD Tech DR.